You are live. And I also only did the YouTube because I don't know if that was eating up bandwidth too. Um, and what else? It doesn't save on Twitch. Well, I'm not. We're not like affiliates yet or whatever, so it doesn't really save on Twitch. So it's just like it's live and then it's gone.
Live and direct.
Man. And it sounds pretty good for you not having your cans on. So,
well, I don't have anything open. I mean, you're probably going to bitch at some point because I have my sliding door open and there's got to be a train. But
that's all right. Both of my boys are still up. Jack stays up.
I was gonna say, man, I ain't sweating my dick off no more for 2 hours after a podcast for 6 listeners.
Hey, it's 13, okay?
Oh, my bad.
Hi there. I'm Morgan Freeman. Welcome in. Welcome back to Revolutionary Roulette.
Do you guys ever remember the time that I had an arm brace? And I said that I was going to keep it on until I could masturbate my way out of it, like Forrest Gump did with his legs. Well, look at this.
Didn't Morgan Freeman like marry his like granddaughter or some shit like that?
I don't know, man. Hollywood. More like Holly Weird, am I right?
So, for real though, welcome in, welcome back to Revolutionary Roulette. I'm Rob Zielinski. You can find me on Twitter at Rob Zielinski. Follow us on Instagram at Revolutionary Roulette or email the show at revolutionaryroulette@gmail.com. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Mr. Joshua Catlow.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You can find me at Joshua Patrick on both Facebook and Instagram. You can find me on Twitter at Joshua Catlow, begging for the firing of Matt Nagy. And you can find me in the picture of the 2012 Yale lacrosse team, as apparently I am a bad human.
We last left off with the advice to a daughter pocketbook that indoctrinated young girls to bend the proverbial knee to the patriarchy. And as dark and messed up as that was, there were some bright spots like Anne Hutchinson. I couldn't research her as much as I would have liked to, but it sure seemed like she was a great person. At the very least, she was incredibly smart, incredibly brave, and a very dignified woman. So Anne Hutchinson was the mother of 13 children, who was a very religious, and she became a preacher. She got into a bit of hot water when the Massachusetts Bay Colony and the old church fathers, because she dared to say that she, a woman, can interpret the Bible for herself. And the
this bitch crazy. You can't translate them Jesus words.
Thinking you got a brain and such. So yeah, so and the clergymen were like, no, you can't. This here is a man book, and it was written by a man, and a man is supposed to tell you what you should be learning from the man Bible.
And let's just be so fucking honest. That's probably one of the biggest problems with not only Christianity, but the Bible. It was written and then broken down and then rewritten and then fabricated, all by savage ass men that wanted to use it for their own agendas. But Anne Hutchinson, considered one of the earliest American feminists, put some challenge behind that as a spiritual leader and said, hey, look, you nasty motherfuckers, I can figure out what this Jesus dude is saying all by my goddamn self and get off my ass.
That's right. Yeah. So
Something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, of course.
so yeah, so it was the the man Mibel, or what ought to be called a Mibel. And Anne Hutchinson was like, yeah, no, like you said, I'm good, and I'll just be preaching over here to these 60 or so followers I now have that listen to me criticize your shitty readings of the Bible. So Massachusetts Governor John Winthrop said Anne Hutchinson was, quote, a woman of haughty and fierce carriage, of a nimble wit and active spirit, and a very voluble tongue, more bold than a man, though in understanding and judgment inferior to many women. So he's like, yeah, she's a complete badass and a warrior who's braver than men, but because of those characteristics, she's dumb and has bad judgment. So like just some real micro penis vibes going on there for old Mr. Winthrop.
He's talking about her nimbleness and her tongue. It's like, pick a fucking lane, bro. Is she a leader of a feminist liaison, or is she somebody that is you're transpiring after? I mean, pick a lane.
Right. Yeah. And you could tell he was certainly intimidated by her.
She was like many women of that era. She had no formal education, which I can 100% relate to in the fullest, because I can't ever get a decent paying job because I am what you call formally uneducated. I don't have a piece of paper that cost me $36,000, $50,000, $150,000 that say I was educated by some prestigiously white university that most of their students probably shouldn't even have made it into. But she persevered and decided to join other religious dissidents in North America and migrated her family to Massachusetts. Massachusetts. That's the hardest fucking word in the English dictionary for a lisp having motherfucker like me. So she migrated with her family to Massachusetts Bay Colony when she was around 43 years old.
Okay, pretty specific age. I didn't know you dug in that deep on her.
Oh, I did.
And there was I had a buddy of mine who said what you said, but called it Massachusetts, like that was the actual pronunciation of it. And I'm like, dude, that's not how you say it. He's like, yeah, it is. And then like whatever it was, weeks later, I heard his grandfather call it Massachusetts. So I'm like, oh, that's where you got it. But like, still, you should somebody should have corrected you by now. It's Massachusetts.
I gotta bite my tongue because I like the ex-girlfriend made fun of me about it. She's like, say that shit again, you fucking you lispy motherfucker. I thought it was just fat and stupid. Now you got a lisp that I can make fun of, you dumb bitch. I'm gonna throw you into the 1963 women's category.
So what ends up happening is Anne Hutchinson is put on trial twice. Once for challenging the authority of Micropenis Winthrop and his Massachusetts government, and then by the church for heresy. And at the government trial, Anne was pregnant and sick, and the assholes conducting the trial wouldn't even allow her to sit. Then at the church trial, she was sick again, but she ran figurative circles around her interrogators with her expert Bible knowledge. And did finally give in and quote unquote repented, but they just weren't having it. And she said, quote, I don't have the quote in front of me, motherfucker. Oh, no, here it is.
She's coming up great.
She said, quote, sorry, I will cut this out. We're only like 10 minutes in. I'll cut it out of the podcast. So, Anne did finally give in and quote unquote repented, but they weren't having it. And she said, quote, why do I keep saying she said? That's not what she said.
That's what she said.
That's what she said. She didn't say what she said.
Massachusetts, this shit up.
Massachusetts. What the fuck? Anne did finally give in and repented, but they weren't having it and said, quote, her repentance is not in her countenance, which is hysterical since countenance means like a person's facial expression, and she repented in writing. I just like read that and rolled my eyes so hard, like my equilibrium was off for a week. But these fragile ego wimps meant it and actually banished Anne from Massachusetts, and she up and left for Rhode Island, taking with her 35 families, not 35 people, 35 full ass families to continue to listen to her preach down in Rhode Island.
We're gonna take the word of Jesus down to Rhode Island, and it's gonna be preached by a woman.
Mm-hmm. So it's just anytime I think of Rhode Island, it's all Family Guy, Peter Griffin. Yeah, just all of them. Lois, I tried to do a Lois. I tried to like over and over. I couldn't. Peter, but like
Peter.
It's like Lois and Peter Griffin combined. Peter.
One might say it was a quagmire to allow Anne Hutchinson to spread the word of God on her own. Giggity.
You got her. Giggity goo. So, unfortunately, everyone had to just listen to that. But also, unfortunately, it wasn't a fairy tale ending for Ms. Hutchinson. After Rhode Island, she moved to Long Island, where she was mistaken by Native Americans as one of the colonizers who defrauded them of their land, and they murdered her and her entire family.
Not no biggie.
not,
I mean,
not a BFG, not a big fucking deal.
It's
BFD.
It's at this point of our story, at our arc, at our index, whatever word you want to say, this is the same shit that we've been talking about for 20, 30 episodes now. So that's the train I'm telling you about, by the way. So
ambiance.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. I refuse to sweat profusely for the 15 seconds in which the train went by. But just in all seriousness, it's they got rid of a woman of an extraordinary intelligence because they were threatened by her leadership in a era when she couldn't lead if she tried. I mean, which she did with the few families that migrated. Not few, I guess it was an ample effort on her part with 35 families following her to Long Island, or Rhode Island, excuse me. She was murdered in Long Island. But it's just it's the same old shit. I'm trying to think of a fancy way to put it, but there is none. It's that all these women have been going through since day one. The end.
Yeah,
I'll shut up.
You can't. Yeah, basically, you can't sugarcoat the shit. Like, this is just what has been fucking happening. And I guess you could say maybe you lost your train of thought. I was really hoping you actually lost your train of thought, but you had to fucking come through like a champ, like an asshole for, you know.
Don't worry, the train of thought hasn't got many notes left, so I'll be losing something.
This bitch is going off the rails.
Yeah.
So one more quick interesting fact on the Anne Hutchinson saga is that she had one other person, another woman warrior named Mary Dyer, who spoke on her behalf at her trial. 20 years later, Mary was hanged by the colony government for rebellion and sedition. So another salute to a badass woman, Mary Dyer, and then obviously, of course, for Anne Hutchinson. So, as you could guess, women weren't exactly allowed to openly engage and participate in public affairs. However, when the American Revolution was on, then the men were all for it. That's when women formed patriotic groups like Daughters of Liberty and insisted women boycott British goods and buy only American made stuff and make their own clothes and other goods when possible. It kind of sounds like a partial general strike, especially the part about making your own clothes and things and trying to ease their consumption. Women lead the smart way again. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, we're not very accountable for our actions a lot of time when it comes to men and speaking and over abusing authority. However, in this particular instance, it was a beautiful thing where it actually tried to once again stand amongst themselves, stand on their own, and forcibly make a change. But we'll get to the demise of this very shortly as well.
So
Stay tuned.
You've heard of the Boston Tea Party, but have you ever heard of the Coffee Party? Well, that's what Abigail Adams called it when a wealthy merchant who had a shit ton of coffee and wanted to price gouge an unknown committee made up entirely of women. So around 100 women showed up to his warehouse and told him to fork over the keys. One of the women basically chokeslammed this weasel into a cart of coffee beans. And I like to think that he shat his pants and gave the women the keys to the warehouse where they packed all the coffee into trunks and drove off in their cart. And it's like, that's how it's fucking done, folks.
I'd like to think that the last thing that went through his mind, other than that dark roast, was how the hell did Abigail Adams ever get the best of me? That was a beautifully done Shawshank line from 1963 in an Abigail's Adam twist. You're welcome.
What year did it come out?
Shawshank came out in 95.
Okay, 95. You said like 63 or some shit.
I said 1693, which is when the coffee strike took place, no?
There you go. Yeah, 1693. Okay.
No, I apologize. I'm wrong with that, but let me find the actual date. Continue, sir.
No, don't even worry about it. So another interesting to note is that more recently, women historians have shed a light on working class women who've been ignored simply because they were working class women who didn't share a last name with American royalty like Abigail Adams or Martha Washington. These were tough women from the lower social classes who were beautified into these sort of Miss Universe contestants by male historians over the years. So during the last years of the Revolutionary War, these poor women, like literally, like fiscally poor, voluntarily went into army encampments and helped and even fought in the war, only later to be represented as prostitutes, which we know back then had a negative connotation. And just in case I have to say it, nobody should really be saying the word prostitute or prostitutes anymore. They're sex workers, and sex work is real work.
I agree 100%. You got to pay the bills however you got to pay the bills. And if you choose to do it with your money maker, then do the damn thing. And like just to piggyback off what you were saying, a lot of times when women were actually allowed to share their voices, it was because of their prominence within a community. So Abigail Adams, not necessarily, but in certain instances, if it was a wife of a politician or something along those lines, they would spread her words if they were deemed beneficial for the larger group's success, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that makes so. I'll just and I'll even piggyback on that as well. So it's like we'll give the credit where the credit's due, because right, it's usually women with ruling class husbands who have been recorded in our whitewashed American history. So we actually do have an excerpt from Abigail Adams in March of 1776, which is obviously even before the Declaration of Independence. Quote, "In the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power in the hands of husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention are not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound to obey the laws in which we have no voice of representation." So it was nice to see and hear Mrs. Adams mince no words there.
Right. And she wasn't considered on the same lines of feminism as some historians would have. Why am I drawing the woman we just spoke of prior to this, Rob?
Oh, Anne Hutchinson, or
thank you.
Yeah.
She wasn't on the same feminist lines as Anne Hutchinson. She was a woman who was given greater respect when her words were spoken because of A, her intelligence, and B, her ties to obviously John Adams.
Right. Yeah. Just her station in life. So real quick, the three women that Zinn mentions in the book are Margaret Corbin, aka Dirty Kate, which I don't know how how you get Dirty Kate from Margaret Corbin. Like Margaret Corbin.
That might have been a prostitute.
You can call me Dirty Kate.
I mean, sex worker name.
Yeah, right. So then we got Margaret Corbin, aka Dirty Kate, and then Deborah Sampson Garnett, and then Molly Pitcher. So if you, the listeners, want a little homework, you can go ahead and research those women for yourself. I ain't gonna do it. I probably will, but I'm not gonna put it into the show.
Exactly. And also, if you want to know more about Dirty Kate, just ask Cleveland to close the door. You're letting the stank out.
You're letting all the stank out. So, okay, as we know, Thomas the Rapist Jefferson went ahead and wrote words like "all men are created equal," and said things like women would be, quote, too wise to wrinkle their foreheads with politics. So yeah, when he said all men are created equal, he meant it. And obviously not surprising coming from Thomas Raperson.
It's I mean, let's just face it. He probably had women rolling over in their oil of Olay, like talking about wrinkles on their forehead when they're trying to think. It's like, Jesus Christ, how much are you going to try and kick them in the ovaries and you still don't give them any respect whatsoever? It's like, where do you draw the line?
Right.
Well, we know where they draw the line when it's beneficial to them. And most of the time they would have been much more beneficial by listening to the women leaders of that time than going about their angry ways. But I digress.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, the line is there is none, right? If it's going to improve my greenback stack, like fuck it, I'm doing it. Which includes, obviously slavery and raping underage girls, just for the sheer pleasure of it. So, keeping with the oppressing women theme, only one of the new state constitutions gave women the right to vote. So, props to New Jersey for that. Not because these motherfuckers rescinded women's right to vote in 1807. So, and then in the New York state constitution, women's right to vote was targeted as it specifically uses the word male for voting rights. Oh, you ladies want to vote? Forget about it.
It's like, at this point, if you're a woman, you're just like, fuck it. You guys are a bunch of numbskulls anyways. Who gives a fuck? Just put me out of my misery. I'm going to die of dysentery in the next 20 years. Either that or one of you fucking lazy fucks are going to end up hanging me because you think I'm some kind of witch anyways, because I have a brain and I got wrinkles on my forehead because I'm freaking you stupid cocksuckers.
So going back to Abigail Adams for a moment, and her, we are determined to foment a rebellion line. So the rebellious sentiment was there, especially for working class women. There was no way to record these sentiments and organize in any meaningful way. Only 40% of women were literate around the year 1750. A lot of women were poverty stricken and bearing a large number of children and raising them in their homes. It reminds me of the enslaved and indentured servants in the way that they were just stuck in this one spot, so that it really hamstrung their ability to organize and revolt. But also just know that not all women were homemakers or staymakers. Women, quote, were shopkeepers and innkeepers and engaged in many trades. They were bakers, tin workers, brewers, tanners, rope makers, lumberjacks, printers, morticians, and woodworkers,
and sex workers.
Right, and sex workers. And
sex workers.
What?
And sex workers.
I said and sex workers.
Oh, my apologies. Sorry.
And sex workers. So women have been in the workforce from the beginning. But since it's still happening, it means that the pay gap has probably existed from the very beginning as well.
One of the things that we were talking about is she wasn't considered, I'm speaking of Abigail Adams, she wasn't considered right on line with the feminists that Hutchinson was, but she did ally with Judith Sargent Murray efforts to expand women's education, because Adams too saw mothers as having a vital role in preparing sons to be virtuous citizens and leaders in the new republic. Kind of that seems like a stretch because of just how virtuous-less the other men of the era were. And though John Adams did not take his wife very seriously throughout his life, he sought her opinion on a lot of political matters and other things as she traveled with him throughout Europe for 5 years in 1783 to 1788 during his stint as a diplomat when he was elected president in 1797.
That's good stuff right there.
You're very welcome.
So even though it was difficult for women to organize, there was still always a sense of female equality both before and after the Revolutionary War. Our boy from one of our first episodes, Thomas Paine, was one of the first American renegades, like the Rage Against the Machine song. Nothing stayed the same, but there were always renegades. like Chief Sitting Bull, Tom Paine, Dr. Malcolm Luther King, Malcolm X. They were renegades of their time and age. So T-Pain actually spoke out for female equality and women's rights.
And he made pretty decent trap music in the early 2000s. Auto-tune.
So I'm about ready to wrap up here. Of course, with a quote. Did you have anything, any other notes that you had to throw this way, or just close it out here with this quote?
There was just a little bit more as I was looking down. In 1797, John was quoted to writing to his wife that I never wanted your advice and assistance more in my life. When he was speaking to his wife about a controversial Alien and Sedation Act in 1798. So it's like a holy shit moment. It's like, oh my God, she had a beautiful idea. Let me see how I can pawn that off as my own. And that's essentially what he did.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that next week.
Not surprising in the least.
Not gonna let her take credit for it.
So this is gonna be like it's kind of like a quote within a quote, but you'll see when we get there. So this is from Zinn, the pioneering book of Mary Wollstonecraft in England, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, was reprinted in the United States shortly after the Revolutionary War. Wollstonecraft was responding to the English conservative and opponent of the French Revolution, Edmund Burke, who had written in his Reflections on the Revolution in France that, quote, a woman is but an animal, and an animal not of the highest order. She wrote, quote, I wish to persuade women to endeavor to acquire strength, both of mind and body, and to convince them that soft phrases, susceptibility of heart, delicacy of sentiment, and refinement of taste are almost synonymous with I never know how to say this word. Epithets of weakness are almost synonymous with epithets of weakness, and that those beings who are only the objects of pity and that kind of love will soon become objects of contempt. I wish to show that the first object of laudable ambition is to obtain a character as a human being, regardless of the distinction of sex. So yeah, it was like it was almost like diss tracks.
It was the first versus battle in the history. I really don't know what to make of that. Like, it's almost like a backhanded compliment in a way. Or am I mistaken? Is it just completely a slap in the face?
I mean, I think she's. I mean, I don't think it's either. The way I'm reading it is that she's saying like, yes, we're women, and we say like soft phrases and you know, refinement of taste or whatever. So like, you know, these would have become known as like these womanly things in the 18th century. Like, yes, we're about that, but like, we can also kick so much ass. Like, and it was almost like a warning to men, especially men like this Edward Burke, who was saying like a woman is an animal and not an animal of the highest order. Like, fuck you. Like, I'm a refined woman. I have these, I say these soft phrases, but like, you know, you're thinking I'm this fucking kitty cat, but actually I'm a lioness who will fucking rip your face off.
We about that life, son.
Basically. So that's where we'll leave it for this week when it comes to the book. There is a bit of a like subject change or like a tonal change within the book. So I think it's a good spot to leave it there. There's a lot of quotes that Zinn puts in the book. It's quote heavy, which probably means the next episode will be quote heavy. So just a heads up on that. I know some people like that, some people don't. But just know that it will probably be quote heavy, and it's not like Zinn quote heavy. We have, we're bringing the receipts. This is a people's history of the United States. So we're bringing the receipts from women who were oppressed. So we'll cover that in depth and probably wrap up this chapter 6, the intimately oppressed, next week. Real quick, I wanted to discuss a couple of things. Going back to the Renegades of Funk song, you'll notice that there's a part where he sings "Destroy all nations, destroy all nations," over and over. Maybe it's like a times 8 count. And I think that has to do with a popular label on the left spectrum, on the left side of the political spectrum. And that's like international socialist or international socialism, which makes so much sense, right? Because like if you don't have borders, you just treat everybody as like one, not nation. It's just one.
Right.
Because if you do, like, nationalism is basically the opposite of internationalism, right? And if you have national socialism, you get Nazism. That's what it's short for, national socialism, Nazis. And before some people jump out there, Hitler was not a socialist. Please, he was a fascist. Socialism was a very popular, ideal back when his rise to power in the 20s and 30s. So he changed his party name to the National Socialist because socialism was popular and he could gain more support by stealing just the thoughts that and the philosophy that goes behind socialism. So I thought it was just like super cool. I've learned terms like international socialism, and then I go back and revisit songs like Renegades of Funk, and I hear him singing "Destroy All Nations," and I'm like, damn, they were probably or still are international socialists.
Tom Morello is a well-educated man. People give him shit because he speaks his mind on a platform in which he
I got another train going by.
Sorry. People give him a hard time for speaking his mind about socialism and other things when he's speaking his mind on a platform in which he paved his own way for. And how it's funny how somebody who's charging all this money for tickets, etc., blah, blah, blah. I don't think people realize the actual positive impact that people like that in the world have that try to go about their way to educate you and give you a different perspective. On the most recent episode of Tom Morello One Man Revolution, he was speaking with his mother on her 98th birthday about give me a minute. train of thought.
Is this a podcast of his?
It's on Sirius XM radio.
Okay.
And he was speaking of how if it wasn't for his mother standing up for him, being a young mixed man, and her being a teacher, and her telling him to throw fists, teaching, since his father wasn't around, teaching him how to throw fists, that he would have never known how to stand up for himself. And you think about the early roots in Libertyville, Illinois, where that comes from, and you just appreciate even more the path that that man paved for himself. And I think we should appreciate even more musical talents like that, because there was more than just Rage Against the Machine that were speaking out against things like this. One more thing I wanted to piggyback off of was when you were saying, I got to start jotting notes down while you're talking, but when you were speaking of the Renegades of Funk,
I actually wanted to try that again and maybe splice that in where he says Chief Sitting Bull, Tom Paine, Dr. Martin Luther X. I almost said Martin Luther X. Fucking asshole.
I think he did last time too.
Tom Paine, Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. They were renegades of their time and age.
There you go. Why am I give up?
It's all right to think about it. I could cut this.
Give me a second. I don't want you having fucking. We were talking about what was your swing point about the song Renegades? What did you
Destroy All Nations? Is what I brought up.
Got it.
Okay, what is it?
It was very reminiscent of how Joe Biden and Kamala Harris ran on the platform when the people in Mexico were trying to seek asylum in America. And they had to deal with the fence, the border patrol, whips, cages, food, lack of food, water, nourishment, sleeping arrangements, and the trauma that it gave to these children at such a young age. And now, with the situation in Haiti, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris haven't done a fucking thing to help them seek asylum. Now, I understand the fact that most people believe that we should have accountability and understand each and every person that comes into this country. And I would necessarily even lean towards, okay, that's fine. But as long as you do so with the understanding that this is a place of refuge, there's a law, the Refugee Act of 1980. We're not turning anybody away.
Right.
I mean, that's what this nation was built on.
Yeah, it is not illegal to seek refuge. It is not illegal to seek asylum.
And for the most part, we want to provide these people with comfort and protection. What the fuck am I saying for the most part? No, we don't, because the most people don't want to do that. The most people want to lock them off at each and every border possible. But that Refugee Act was put into law for a specific reason. And that specific reason was because children and women and even males, for Christ's sake, shouldn't have to deal with trauma when their land is being bombarded with every type of problem, known to man. And the lack of action by Biden and Harris on this matter is deeply disturbing.
I mean, Biden even sent her down and you know, she gave the same message that Trump did. Do not come. So again, this is part of what I say, that part of the, it's the duopoly. It's the, it's Republicans and diet Republicans. It's one party. It's, an oligarchy, right? This isn't, we don't live in a democracy. We don't live in a, or you know, we're supposedly a republic because we vote for people to vote for us on our behalf as their constituents. And it doesn't happen. You just get,
it doesn't work, doesn't happen. They might as well have went down there and started throwing paper towel rolls like they did in Mexico.
I believe it's Puerto Rico for the hurricane. And Haiti. If you want to learn about Haiti,
Haiti politics.
You talk about oppressed. They've been oppressed from the very beginning. Go ahead and read the book, The Black Jacobins. Jacobin was named for one of the like lefty offshoots of the French Revolution, and you'll learn a great deal about guys like Toussaint Louverture, and just like people that everybody really ought to know and know their story. So again, that's the Black Jacobins.
Jacobins and Tupac Shakur. Gotcha.
Other thing I wanted to bring up was people just like not listening to some of the things that they're consuming, like Rage Against the Machine music and lyrics, especially because I've seen guys who are like staunch libertarians put on their like Instagram stories quoting like "fuck you, I won't do what you tell me," and it's like, that's real cute. Like, obviously you know the song. Did you listen to any other songs that they have? Do you know what exactly they're saying "fuck you" to? Like I just don't understand. Like, you've obviously listened to it, but you didn't hear it, right? And it reminds me again of another podcast that I listened to. It's called Time Suck, and there's this. It's by this comedian Dan Cummings, and Dan is hilarious. He's so funny. His stand-up is unbelievable. Just some of the funniest shit. And on his podcast, Time Suck, it's like a history podcast. He covered Robin Williams, like his entire life. So that was a great episode. Dan Cummings, also libertarian. And this, I usually say this, like, libertarians mostly are just like people who are conservative with like conservative views, who want to do drugs, right? They don't want any regulations. And they think like the free market will like solve any and all problems, like private sectors will solve anything. And at the end of the episode, Dan says that George Carlin is his favorite comedian of all time. He said, like, as much as he loved Robin Williams, he still has to give it to George Carlin. And George Carlin is my favorite comedian of all time. And I'm just, it came out.
What the fuck is he listening to?
This is what I'm saying. Like, what I don't get it. What isn't computing? Like, George Carlin was a leftist, so much so, like, it was found out like years later he like subscribed to like this sort of like an anarchist newsletter or something like that.
I think it was called Eat a Dick Breitbart.
So yeah, I'm just like, how could Dan Carlin, how could George Carlin be Dan Cummings' favorite comedian, stand-up comedian, and just like I don't know. I guess it makes sense. You could just like somebody's work, especially their body of work, and still just say like, hey, I think he's wrong when it comes to the politics. I just I don't know how you can listen to George Carlin and all of the amazing things that he said about the American government, because he's one of these guys who knows the true American history, like we're trying to learn about now, and not get any of that message. Maybe he did. Maybe he does get some. This was the one thing that I did want to mention about Dan for his show. He's got like it's really popular, and he donates tens of thousands of dollars to charities and stuff. So like he's, again, people have different political views than us, but it doesn't mean they're bad people. Like, he's a good guy. I just don't understand how Dan Carlin could be your favorite comedian, and you at least not be like on the left side of the political spectrum. That's all.
It's reminiscent of the "I will not comply" folks, who are a vast majority of, if not mostly, white males in their 30s to 60s range. And you think to yourself, I will not comply. I will not say that again. I will not comply. Oh, really? No shit. You're white and you're middle-aged and you've never had a period in time that you can go back in history to and have to deal with a negative aspect of life. So when you say you will not comply, of course you won't, because you've never had to fear anything in your life. But it's not Rage Against the Machine that says this. It's Audio Slave. Close enough.
Yeah.
Your time will come. That's what they say in a very catchy tune by Tom Morello and the gang. So,
and then just one last thing is just, we lost Norm Macdonald, which was just like a huge blow, and it just sucks. Been listening to, actually watching so many of his clips on YouTube. So it just sucks that, like, it seemingly, since we started this freaking podcast, we've been losing so many legends to the other side. So just wanted to say my thank you to Norm Macdonald for all the laughs, especially lately with the kind of like rediscovering him on YouTube, and just like watching clips of Dirty Work, which is like one of my top 5 comedies of all time.
He had such a way with improvisational comedy and feeding off of the people around him. Like, he was one of the best comedians on the couch next to Rodney Dangerfield. It's between Norm Macdonald and Rodney Dangerfield, back with Johnny Carson and Conan O'Brien. It's a shame. And one of the theories that my buddy came up with, he said that as soon as he was diagnosed with cancer, which people did not know, but he became very heavily cancer-esque with his material at one point. where people were getting very upset with him. And my buddy Cole has a take that it was the ultimate, look, I'm going to die from this shit. Who gets the last laugh now? And he was one of the people that said, you don't lose your battle to cancer. You don't lose your fight to cancer. You go down fighting it the whole way, and at the very worst, it's a draw because I took that shit down with me. So,
yeah, no, that's great.
Much love to him. Do we have 60 seconds for a Norm joke?
Yeah.
So it's actually probably about double the 60 seconds, but I'll make it quick. Norm McDonald goes outside to get his newspaper, and there's a new neighbor that moves in across the street, and he hasn't met him yet. And he's like, hey, howdy, neighbor. And he's like, hey, and they chat for a little bit, and Norm asks, well, so what do you do anyway, neighbor? And he's like, well, I'm a professor at the College of Logic down the street. And Norm looks at him, he's like, get the fuck, the College of Logic, did you say? And he's like, yeah, I'm a professor at the College of, he's like, I don't know where the fucking College of Logic is, but what does that entail? He's like, well, I use the power of deduction a lot. So, for instance, do you have a doghouse? And Norm's like, yeah. And he's like, well, I can deduce that by you having a doghouse that you have a dog, which probably means that you have wife and kids. Is that correct? And Norm was like, yeah, I do. And he's like, well, you have a doghouse, you have a wife and kids, and you live in this home all together. I can deduce that you're a straight male, correct? And you're heterosexual. And he's like, yeah, that's right. And he's like, well, see, that's just a little sample of what I do. I use the power of deductions to figure things out. So Norm's on his way to work on the train, and he sees another neighbor as his. And he's like, hey, did you meet the new neighbor that moved in across the street? He's kind of a weird guy. And Norm was like, yeah, I met him. And we were talking about the professor at the College of Logic. And he was like, the other neighbor's like, the College of Logic? What the fuck is that? And Norm's like, well, let me show you. And the neighbor was like, okay. So Norm says, so do you have a doghouse? And the other neighbor's like, no, why? And he's like, well, by that I can deduce that you're a homosexual.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's good. I would also look up the moth joke on one of his Conan appearances, and there's actually a really good story behind that too. So if you revisit that, I'll definitely let you know some of the behind the scenes information of how that came about. So yeah, that's good. We'll wrap it up. And so you got any final thoughts?
Just one love, everybody, and we're gonna miss you, Norm.
Yeah, and exactly. Just to reiterate, like we've said this a few times, especially towards the beginning. Like this podcast is like it's about love. It's not about like fighting each other. It's not about like so I get I get guys who are like, oh, have me on as a guest, debate me. Like this whole like debate bro culture is like toxic as fuck. And obviously like that's not what we do. This show is about American history, and we're us learning together. So if you're one of those people, and I'm not singling anybody out because I get at least 3 a week who want to like come on and debate. It's not what we do. Get your own platform, buy your own snowball microphone and do it yourself.
And then invite us on to fuck up your podcast.
No, I will not be doing that.
I will.
So,
And I'm
so,
fact checking everything you motherfuckers have to say.
but you know, it's you know, we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things politically, but like this is to try to help educate some people just on some of the things that they don't know with this book, because you know this was stuff 30, you know, like we said, like 37-year-old man, you're 40, we didn't learn the shit until the past year. So if we could just like bend the ear of a couple of people just to give them more information, just something to think about, you know, then that's part of what we're doing here. So there's no you know,
If we're getting people
animosity.
upset enough or interested enough where they want to debate our facts that come from this book, we got to be doing something right to piss them off that much. So, like you said, it's all love, and we respect the opinions of others. That being said, there's certain things you can and cannot disagree with when it comes to political issues. And Rob is a more loving person than I am. There's certain things that I just don't deal with, and I try not to put them in my life. So we appreciate you listening, obviously, but
Yeah, and we get some
type of platform.
Right. Yeah. It's just it's just a different platform, like you said. And these guys are saying like nice things and, you know, being cordial. It's like, I don't agree with a word that you're saying, but I love the show. So I'll take it, you know, and maybe there's like one thing that will, you know, change your the political lens that you look through. Just that, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but you know, if it's gonna like push you a little bit left, or to be like feel a little bit more love towards somebody, then you know, that's part of the job we want to get done here. So yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys.
Renegades are the people with their own philosophy. They change the course of history. Everyday people like you and me. Well, not me, but maybe Rob someday. Because I'm too stupid.